there any other topics anyone wants to talk?
A couple words that we check our mics.
Testing, 1, 2, testing. We good to go? Everybody good? All right. Good to go? Okay. Good morning, folks, and I appreciate you coming here on short notice, but this is a popular topic that I know that your stations and your viewers and readers are fascinated with. I stood before you on August 11th and had a very similar press conference where and it was upon the time that Congressman Collins suspended his campaign for Congress for New York 27. The indictment took place on August the 8th. And at that time, I told you, as I've told you countless times, that we believe there are mechanisms in place to replace Congressman Collins on the ballot with his cooperation. Today, I formally learned that we no longer have Congressman Collins' cooperation in our efforts to substitute him from the ballot. This is the culmination of 6 weeks of legal research, hard work, a lot of decision-making, 8 counties of Republican leadership really digging into an unprecedented situation that comes with no playbook. We were truly in uncharted waters. We have a crystal clear way to replace Congressman Collins on the ballot, but it is the sole decision of he and his legal team at this point to not take that option, that they will keep Congressman Collins on the ballot for this election through Election Day. So this is obviously not something that we were expecting. As I think Dave Graber's interview with Channel 4 made it clear, as of last Monday, Mr. Collins was fully prepared to work with party officials to substitute himself from the ballot. So we had no reason to expect this, which you can't help but feel a little bit like a jilted groom at the altar here as we get to the week where we are, planning to make a substitution for this not to be the case at this point. So we are very surprised, but Congressman Collins will appear on the ballot. He has made that decision with his legal team, at his legal team's urging. We maintain that, we definitely had a crystal clear avenue to replace Congressman Collins on the ballot, but it's no longer in the best interests of his legal team and legal defense, is what I am told is the reason that he has chosen to remain on the ballot at this time. This comes as a disappointment to Republican leaders, myself along with others across this district, which we thought it would be better to offer voters a choice of a candidate that did not face the distractions of a legal defense at this time. I believe in, Congressman Collins has owed his day in court, which will come at some point next year, but it made sense at the time of him suspending his campaign to go focus on that legal defense rather than to face a tough uphill campaign. But at this time, I will take any questions you have.
Have you talked to Chris Collins himself?
This morning, I had my first conversation with Congressman Collins, and it's at that time I had spoken to his attorneys late Friday and was informed that they were no longer supportive of his signing declinations and substitutions from the ballot. And then he affirmed to me this morning that he will remain on the ballot and that he's going to follow the advice of his attorneys that are orchestrating his legal defense. One at a time. I'll answer them all. So just Steve.
Did you give an explanation as to what about getting off the ballot will harm his legal defense?
There were. Listen. I'm not a privileged member of his legal team. There's things that I'm sure that they won't discuss with me. They felt that signing certain documents in basically lawsuits that come up in nearly every controversial election law situation could undermine his legal defense in some way.
And what did you say to Chris Collins?
I'm obviously, we've been working for 6 weeks on this, and the whole way we felt that, there was a clear avenue to replace Congressman Collins with his cooperation. I've always maintained to all of you with his cooperation, and that's always been a caveat I've put out there, because if in the event that he changed his mind, we'll find ourselves where we are today.
What did you say to him?
I'm going to leave our conversation private at this point.
How much did you push back and say, Chris, we don't think this gives us the best chance to win in November?
I mean, this is obviously not the avenue we've been trying to take. We've been trying to work very hard since the day of his indictment. We've been laying the groundwork to substitute him from the ballot, from hour one of that situation. This is something we did not expect to happen. As he sat on your station, Chris, and said, I will cooperate with Republican officials to substitute my name off the ballot. So this comes as a pretty great surprise to all of us who have worked very, very hard, and then had the rug pulled out from under us.
So did you express that?
One at a time.
Did
I
you
will.
express that disappointment?
I like I said, I'm going to leave my conversation with the congressman private. Bob.
What will you do now, Mr. Chairman? I mean, will you and the party work for his reelection?
Well, at this point, I mean, this is very fresh, so I haven't had a conversation yet with my colleagues across the 8 counties. He is, there's a fact that he controls. He's the nominee of the Republican Party. He is on the line. He appears on the ballot on the Republican, the Conservative, and the Independence line. And I don't know what method he will use to campaign. He has a vast war chest of $1.3 million. I assume he will put that to work if he's going to remain on the ballot. I think it's very important that this seat stays in Republican hands, because Nate McMurray is a vote to impeach the president, and that'll be he and Nancy Pelosi's first order of business next January 1st.
Do you know if he plans to continue to serve should he win?
I don't know. I think that, you know, at this point, if he's going to remain a candidate, he's going to have to be prepared to, you know, be a candidate and talk to the media. I expect that if he's elected, he'll be sworn into another term.
Will the party work?
Tim?
Nick, can you just, kind of give us an idea of what kind of support he gets from you, from the organization, from the county GOP?
Well, I think that it's, I mean, one, federal versus non-federal race is very different. I mean, we can't expend resources on behalf of this seat. Never have, never would, because it's against the law. County Republican parties expend dollars that include corporate resources. Corporate resources are strictly prohibited. So we can expend a total of $1,000 every 2 years on federal races. We have long since blown through that. So I would never be in a position where we could have been running television commercials, paying for any staff or materials on this. At this point, I know Congressman Collins has vast resources in his campaign. I have not yet had the opportunity to discuss this with the White House nor the National Republican Congressional Committee to see what they now think is their best course of action. But obviously, we are very concerned about the House Republican majority and keeping this. And since the beginning, we have worked very hard to try to set the table for this substitution so that we can keep this seat in Republican hands come November, because it's so important to have a Republican majority to help President Trump pass his agenda. So that there's not a resource issue is not one that we ever were able to support. We would have worked with a new candidate to try to raise funds in a very short order, trying to get them connected with people that can make contributions.
Do you anticipate that you and your fellow Republican County chairs are going to support the Collins campaign here through November?
Well, we're gonna have conversations tomorrow in Albany. And the original plan, as I told many of you, was we have a pre-scheduled state committee meeting in Albany tomorrow, where we were going to discuss our final timeline on substitution. I didn't think we'd be able to substitute tomorrow, but we would be. Our original plan had us substituting by Thursday or Friday of this week. This is a big curveball, so I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to talk to my colleagues and get their opinions on everything.
Nick, how would he do, Collins do, against McMurray in November, knowing what you know right now, an indicted congressman against Nick McMurray? Have you seen any private polling?
I think that the race would be relatively close. I really do. I mean, this is a great Republican seat. I mean, Nate McMurray represents the extreme liberal philosophy that doesn't exist in New York 27. He, is someone that, is out there fighting for, single-payer, government-run health care You know, he's someone that is, even though he says he's not with Nancy Pelosi, God help us as to which crazy liberal he actually would support for Speaker. But he is not in the mainstream in terms of his ideology. And no matter what he says right now, he would be a lemming in the flock voting for impeachment of the President of the United States if that majority flips to the Democratic Party in January.
Nick, what
Yes.
does this mean nationally? You brought up the House majority. This by no means should have been a competitive race, but it seems like it is now.
Well, before August 8th, this was not a competitive race. This was not on anyone's radar. And Nate McMurray has not been taken seriously, until August 8th by anybody. And now we find ourselves in a seat where this will draw a lot of attention. It has drawn a lot of attention. Our hope was to substitute a candidate that could have run as a true conservative Republican, working to pass, President Trump's agenda, without distraction. Unfortunately, we're not going to have that opportunity at this point, and this is the cards that we have been dealt at this point.
Was there any conversation even just among the GOP county chairs, as to preparing for lawsuits from the Democratic Party? Should you guys have been able to?
We work through every possible scenario. I mean, our legal team, and that's the true disappointment here is the amount of work that has gone in to the last 6 weeks, but by myself and our legal team and county chairs across this district have really faced a lot of scrutiny, had to listen to an awful lot of opinions from obviously our stakeholders and people in the community, but also just the fact that we wanted to be prepared for any legal scenario, and I think we were. We had developed a plan that I think would, in crystal clear fashion, have been able to replace Congressman Collins from the ballot. He's choosing not to take that avenue, and I just have to respect the fact that that's his decision. And from the beginning, we have maintained we can do this with his cooperation. We can. There's nothing in my power or any Republican leader in the state of New York could do, or in Washington for that matter, to tell him, you're off the ballot. It just does not work that way. At this point, he would have to accept and cooperate with any plans that we've put in place. They've chosen not to do so. Yes, Brooks?
What was the plan?
I'm not, at this point, I don't need to get through with all of that, but I had some people that were prepared to absolutely do some selfless things this week, and at this point, that will not have to come into the forefront because Congressman Collins is going to remain on the ballot.
Have you spoken with the NRCC today?
I have not connected with them as of yet. It's been a very hectic morning, as you can imagine.
Do you expect that the congressman will spend his campaign funds and will mount an active campaign?
I certainly hope so. And if he has a $1.3 million war chest, and if he's going to remain on the ballot, I certainly hope that he will expend all of that money in order to hold this seat in Republican hands. Yes, Tim.
Nick, what do you say to the voter that, I hear this a lot, we get a lot of input from listeners, callers, that says, how do you support a guy under indictment, under federal indictment?
Listen, it is a difficult situation, and that's why from the beginning Republican leaders have worked to try to substitute Congressman Collins from the ballot, because we want to present a choice to voters without distraction of their own legal defense. He deserves his day in court just like any American would to prove his guilt or innocence. That is going to happen in early next year. Unfortunately, it won't happen between now and Election Day. I think that voters are going to have to, take a long, hard look at the fact of what would the person do if a liberal Democrat goes into office from a district that's a dark red conservative Republican district and goes and votes against the will of their district and votes to impeach the president, because that's really the choice that's on the table at this point. You can vote Republican to stop the impeachment of the president, but even as Chuck Schumer said a couple weeks ago, the sooner the better for the impeachment of the president. This is the sort of philosophy that Democrats want to bring to majority parties in the Congress. And the choice that will be in front of voters, not just in New York 27, but across America this year, is do you want the country to be dragged through an impeachment process, or do you want us to let the voters make decisions based on who our president and who our government leaders are? And I think overwhelmingly the voters in the 27th district don't want to see the country dragged through an impeachment trial based on unfounded claims.
Was this process that you were using to get your congressman off the ballot, was that being seconded
It would have commenced very, if not today, tomorrow. Processes that needed to happen underneath would have started to take place. I received word late Friday that, really from the point of Congressman Collins' interview on Channel 4, I think that his legal team had some hesitations after that, and that grew as the week went on, and I finally spoke with his counsel late Friday, and finally had a final conversation with Congressman Collins this morning before I called this press conference.
So did the council indicate to you that they were telling him that they didn't think he should step down? So were you prepared for this announcement?
I have seen, since late Friday, I knew that things were not going in a positive direction. They got a final answer this morning.
Do you know if the congressman had consulted with his lawyers before his interview with you?
I do not know definitively on that.
Would they, without sounding crass here, would they possibly be trying to save the legal fees that they will be using fighting election law? Or
I don't believe so, because I don't think that the election lawsuits, typically those are done in pretty short fashion. The legal fees he's incurring on the criminal side of things would dwarf anything that would come up in a legal battle over an election law case.
Is there polling that suggests this seat's at risk?
I have not commenced any, form of polling on this seat because I can't expend federal resources. But
Have you heard of any polling that would suggest that this seat is at risk?
I have not talked to anybody that has shared a poll with me. I believe that the seat is a strong Republican seat that has a good overlay that supported President Trump by 24 percentage points, and the strongest get-out-the-vote tool that we have is Governor Andrew Cuomo in defeating him.
What if Republicans stay home?
I don't believe that you can convince a Republican to not get out and vote against Andrew Cuomo this year.
are you concerned at all that Tom Perez is in town today and the DNC seems to be getting more interest in this race?
The DNC is not the entity that really spends money on House races. That's the DCCC. When they start making ad buys, that's when you'll know they're serious. Yeah, Tim.
How could Congressman Collins really have cooperated or not cooperated if you hadn't spoken with him until today?
I have been in communication with his team basically every day, through this. Maybe that's hyperbole. Almost every day since this process started. And the indictment came down on August 8th. They were well aware. Documents had been sent to their legal team to review. There was a full appetite for cooperation up until late last week, and that things started to change after the interview on Channel 4.
Do you get betrayed?
I'm not going to talk like that. I am. That's dramatic. I feel I'm disappointed because we have spent so much time on this. As you all know, this is the most difficult thing that I have faced in my 8+ years as chairman of this party. There is no playbook that comes with this. There's an awful lot of Republicans that are asking us to lead them at a difficult time, and they want. And the strong will was everywhere I went, they wanted a fresh choice, someone that can go on, not to just represent us in this coming election, but someone that can be there for the foreseeable, to be a strong Republican voice for this district going forward.
I know you said you hope Collins can win the race. What about the possibility, should the Democrats take the House, that they would then work to remove him from their ranks? Is that just even worse of a distraction for the district?
Well, listen, if he were to be convicted, I would expect that, he would leave office, very swiftly. That's what typically happens upon a conviction. Congressman Grimm, his situation was the most recent example of that on the Republican side. So I think he's owed his trial. I'm not, speaking on any of the charges against him. I'm here talking about just the legal situation we have faced for the last 6 weeks and where we find ourselves today. So, we expected we'd be doing one thing. We learned an awful lot about the election law and processes that had to be in place. And New York State has some of the most arcane, difficult ballot access laws in America. It's a reason why we have more lawsuits surrounding our election cases than probably any other state in the nation. And at this point, we are we're left that this work was for naught. You know, we have what we had on August 8th, which is Congressman Collins, who's under indictment, on the ballot. Any other questions? Okay, thanks everybody.